Good morning, everyone, and happy Sunday to you. We will start with our gathering song, Enter, Rejoice, and Come In. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Open your ears to the song. Open your ears to the song. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Open your hearts, everyone. Open your hearts, everyone. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Don't be afraid of some change. Don't be afraid of some change. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in.
Good morning. I'm Nancy Hirschadter, and I want to welcome all of us to this virtual service of the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Danbury on this windy, wet, rainy, late March day. In like a lion, out like a lion. We are so glad that each one of you is able to join us this morning. And together in community, we can ensure that social distancing does not mean social disengagement. Our weekly services are more than just a gathering of our physical bodies. It's the forming of a sacred time that we create together. Whether you're well-versed in the technology of teleconferencing, or this is your first venture, we welcome you. Whatever the faith and traditions of your past, whatever your theological stance, whatever your heritage, whoever you are, and whomever you love, we welcome you. If you're new to UUCD or are reconnecting with us, please introduce yourself in the chat if you're comfortable doing so that we can welcome you warmly. We are good at that. You can learn more about us on our website and our Facebook page. We encourage you to share our Facebook page and reach out to others who may be isolated at this time and may benefit from the spiritual connection with our loving community. And before I read our announcements, I also want to welcome the Jewish holiday of Passover. I know some of us are Junitarians, as I am, and may at this moment be getting ready for yet another Zoom Seder. So Chag Sameach, or happy holiday to each of us. I just wanted to say one more quick thing about Passover. I cannot remember a year when the themes of freedom from oppression and the seeking of liberation had more resonance and more meaning than right now in this moment. So on to our announcements. Today's announcements: young adults of UUCD will meet today at noon via Zoom. Please contact Sequoia Lowe, address on your screen, for more information. Spiritually Speaking will meet on Monday, tomorrow at 7 via Zoom. For more information and the Zoom link, please contact Joe Gelati at his address on your screen. And last but not least, join Marianne Culla on Tuesday, the 30th at 7 on Zoom to learn how to add some native plants to your lawn or garden and how that can help save declining bird populations. We will discuss specific options for our region. Please email Marianne at kophoto2@hotmail.com or Margaret Henderson, and her address is also on the screen. Again, welcome and have a lovely rainy second night of Passover weekend.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Nancy. Enter, rejoice, and arrive here to this sacred time and place, because our gathering together make it so. Don't be afraid of some change. This is the last Sunday of, I'm sure, the longest month ever. Finally, we have made it through the pandemic winter of 2020, 2021. Finally, we have made it to spring. It is Palm Sunday, the day when Christians through the centuries have celebrated the arrival of Jesus Christ into the city of Jerusalem, riding a donkey, a symbol of peace, and marking the beginning of Holy Week. It is Passover, as Nancy was sharing and reflecting. Earlier this year than last. Last year, I remember so clearly gathering together the delicious symbols, recipes, and unique Haggadahs of Passover for our online UUCD Passover Seder, conducted by several among you. And a blessing for all of us, still adjusting at that time to staying connected to faith and to one another from home. Happy Pesach. It is so good to be with you this morning. This has been a profound and tumultuous year. I expect that by now you have found ways of coping and appreciating your days that you might not have imagined a year ago. Perhaps you start your morning out now by bringing to mind a few things you have to be grateful for as this new day begins. Perhaps you wrestle with health challenges, and so days in which you can get around without being in pain are clear and marvelous blessings, and being able to connect online has been a blessing. I hope you are all feeling the real percolating energy of spring. We are now well into spring 2021, day 9. I'm counting them with glee. Each of you, each of us, bring our own stories, struggles, and yearnings to this online gathering today. Let this be a time when you notice your feelings and thoughts as they arise, and create space for the feelings and thoughts of those journeying along with us during this service. Let us be assured of this common thread among us, our desire to be present to one another, to connect with some sense of beauty that is larger than ourselves, and to find ways to support and encourage each other onward. Come, let us worship together. Please bring a candle or chalice close by now and join me in lighting your chalice. And then in our chalice lighting word. Love is the spirit of this congregation, and justice is its light. This is our covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek and speak the truth in love, to help one another and celebrate life. And now Kristen Papucci will lead us in the RE update and children's affirmation.
Good morning, everyone. It is very good to be together. I'm Kristen Papucci, one of the Religious Education Ministry team's co-chairs. Director of Religious Education, Sierra Marie, is preaching today at the Unitarian Society of Hartford. If there are any children and youth who are in the room but not near the screen, now would be a good time to come over for today's Time for All Ages. Reverend Heather will be sharing the picture book, The Star Keeper by Faith Pray. Today's religious education activity is making care packages for you young adults. If you signed up to participate in this activity, you'll be receiving an email. You should have already received the email with the instructions. And please be in touch with Sierra Marie if you have any questions about that. And now let us say the children's affirmation together, the words for which are printed in your order of service. We are Unitarian Universalists. We are people with open minds, loving hearts, and helping hands. We care for the earth and each other. Have a wonderful day.
So along with many others in Unitarian Universalism, as we look at all the ways we have gone along with white supremacy culture over the centuries, I am trying to be more mindful of when I am inclined to use language and metaphors of darkness in a negative way. So it is with some hesitancy that I share with you this sweet story I picked up this past week. Instead of focusing on the darkness in this story, I will focus on the storms, the tumult, and the loneliness, universal experiences I think we can all relate to that don't re-emphasize the light versus dark, good versus evil, overly common binary. This is The Star Keeper by Faith Pray. The world had been stormy for a long time, rainy, lonely, sad. Every morning, the girl fed the fish and waited for things to be different. But every morning, the world stayed the same. On one especially wet day, the girl got tired of waiting. She made an enormous wish. She wished the loneliness and the isolation away. What was this? A star. It was beautiful and warm and perfect. She longed to keep it for herself. But the girl could tell that the star didn't want to be kept hidden. It needed the girl to help it shine. Surely the best place for a star to light up the world, she thought, was someplace grand. But the people in the fancy house were busy. They didn't even want to stop and see the star. The girl and the star felt small. Next, the girl tried taking it to the shops. Shopkeepers are sensible, the girl figured. Maybe they would know what to do. But even though she knocked and knocked, the doors stayed shut. The girl and the star shivered. Finally, the girl took the star to the center of the village. Maybe someone there would be able to help. But no one seemed interested. The star was gloomy now, shrinkier, wilted. The girl felt it too. By now, the star was as small as a smudge, and the world felt the same. I must not be very good at taking care of stars, thought the girl. Perhaps I should forget my wish. Someone else could try to help it shine. She found a perfect spot for giving up. Only someone was already there. Two someones. Maybe there was something the girl could do. It was a very small thing. She shared her sweater and a tiny piece of the star. Now the star seemed rounder, more glowy. The girl and the star went everywhere. Each time she found something to do or someone to help, the girl broke off a bit of the star. And each time she did, the star grew. Maybe she did know how to be a star keeper. Because it did shine, not all at once, not in a grand way, but in tiny sparks that warmed and flamed and joined stars upon stars upon stars that chased away the loneliness. And the world was different. Let us move now into a time of our own star sharing and connection. Please write in the chat those personal milestones that are lifting up your heart or weighing it down today. And please do reach out and offer your support or affirmation to one another, whether by chatting with everyone or privately. In these so much online times, it takes a little more effort to truly understand what is going on behind and beyond each other's screens. So please do let each other know how you are on this day.
I'm Amelia McPartlin. The surname might sound familiar from my parents, Jen and Matt McPartlin, who have both been very active members of UUCD long before I came along. This is both a blessing and a curse, as both of them have given incredible speeches here, meaning I have a lot to live up to. But even writing this speech, there are so many great things I've learned firsthand from this congregation that it just barely feels like work. And if you're new, I'd firstly like to thank you so much for coming, but I also want to let you know how many amazing, hardworking, and kind people you will meet here. This congregation holds a very special place in my heart, even if I was coming here against my will. The experiences I've gotten here just as a youth have been collectively and truly, honestly, life-changing. I remember one Sunday, I couldn't have been older than 8. I told my parents I wanted to sit in on the session in the main hall. I was a very antsy and social child, so I have no idea what compelled me to listen in rather than go to RE that morning. That would all seem irrelevant if I still didn't remember what the topic of the session was to this day. If you're curious, it was about a housing project that the church was very involved in. That's admittedly the most I can remember, but I'll count my blessings because it was still 8 years ago, and I often have trouble remembering what I had for breakfast. This leads me to my big point. The things that I learned and remember now from UUCD are all bound by the congregation's core aspects of dignity and equality and compassion. Finding that kind of influence is so hard nowadays, and it shouldn't be, but it really is. I'll definitely be showing my Gen Z here, but as someone who grew up with the internet, the amount of people out there who are willing to deceive and lie to easily influence children purely for political reasons is just staggering. It's upset to see how a kid can go on YouTube to watch clips from a game they like and end up on a video featuring a grown adult's political rant. It's all demonizing empathy and pointing fingers at each other, and that's not how children, or anyone for that matter, should form their views. I've always been subscribed to the idea that you should shape your beliefs around unbiased and concise information from all areas, and what I love about Unitarian Universalism is that it gives you the right baseline for those values and beliefs. UU believes in kindness and love and unconditional respect for everybody, and it's something that everybody in the world, I think, should strive for. This congregation in action is just a beautiful thing to witness, especially when you're a part of it. From RE to social action meetings and cons, I can say with total certainty that UUCD is a good influence, but I owe it all to the charitable and kind people who saw that as well and donated to keep the congregation together. So please donate so more children can get that kind of influence and just make the world a happier, better, and equal place. Thank you so much for listening to me, and have a great Sunday.
We come to the time for our congregational offering. If you're with us for the first time, feel free to pass the virtual plate. Your presence here in the Zoom room is your gift to us. Members, please click the link on your screen to make a donation or pledge. For even though we are not in our beloved fellowship hall, our operating expenses are still the same. You may also mail a check to UUCD at 24 Clappard Ridge Road in Danbury. Thank you for doing your part to support and sustain this community we love. Now, please join me in our congregational response. In the spirit of compassion and service, we dedicate these, our offerings.
How do you measure a year in the life 525,000 journeys to Belay. 525,600 minutes. How do you measure the life of a woman or a man?
In truths that she learned, or in times that he cried, in bridges he burned, or the way that she died.
He's seen her, it's ordinary Christmas. Celebrate, remember, here in the life of faith. Remember that
Thank you so much to Jerry for making that gift available to us. You have some good connections in that, Jerry Phelps, to the larger world, and that was from the Bronx Charter Art School for the Arts, Bronx Charter School for the Arts. Thank you so much to Jerry for that. I want to further move into this time in this service today with a poem. This is a very recent poem by Reverend Teresa Inez Soto, and it draws upon the metaphor of a Jacob's Ladder children's toy, which I have rediscovered as a 21st century fidget toy, right? This whole idea of things that help people of all ages focus and a greater appreciation for those. And this is one that came in a recent set for our 8-year-old kid of fidget toys that obviously harkens from an earlier era. I'm sure you all recognize the Jacob's Ladder toy, even if you didn't know that's what it's called. So Teresa writes, "A year is something like one of those Jacob's Ladder toys. A single action sets a block to falling. Is it falling up or falling down? And this year has flexed between periscope, kaleidoscope, and telescope. One day crashed into the next, clack. One challenge into the next, clack. And we have learned that the harder it is, the more care we take, leaning into the strings that hold us together. Because no matter what happens, clack, we remain together, interwoven, such that when our covenant holds, we are the embodiment of the life force that rises between us. And when it lies broken between us, damaged with arrogance and hate, we are the possibility of still rising, of turning the block that falls away into the energy of the mutually assured ascension. We are, after all, both stars and earth, and our promises are always asking to be remade. Come then, let us go up and come down, but always together, for this moment and for the love of the next. Come then, let us go up and come down, but always together for this moment and for the love of the next. There are so many metaphors we might lean on to describe this past year, and none are quite sufficient. You heard me wrestling with moving out of the darkness earlier, and how can we find other metaphors that aren't playing into that binary? How about a roller coaster? I know I used that in the first months of the year. Certainly we're feeling the feeling of coming out of a very long winter, both literally and metaphorically. A hot mess has sometimes been my favorite expression for this year. With great thanks to Jerry Phelps for the music, I loved listening and re-listening to Seasons of Love from Rent, and that line, 525,600 minutes. How do we measure this past year? Regardless of what metaphor you might choose, I have long felt that part of the importance of religious community is that we do take the time to mark meaningful moments in our lives. And this anniversary month of the pandemic is a truly crucial one. I know our kids will now grow up with a recurring classroom topic that the rest of us could barely have imagined. Even if you did grow up during the polio crisis, still, there wasn't online schooling in those days. It took years to craft, test, and distribute a vaccine. It is a different world now in so many ways. What have we all learned and absorbed about how to live through this past year's crisis? What have we learned to be more grateful for? In what ways have we learned to be far more mindful of our individual privilege and the many insidious ways that white supremacy culture undergirds so much of the persistent inequities in this country? I expect that, like we Ryan stars, these have become far more frequent topics in your life and communal conversations this past year, if they weren't already. When I look back at my March 2020 calendar, which I had to do recently to create my, tax information. So I was going meticulously back through and totaling up my mileage and yada, yada. So it was very dramatic how my mileage dropped off suddenly in March 2020. When I look back as a whole at last year, I'm reminded of the cheerful optimism that I entered the pandemic with. We would just quarantine for 14 days. We would still be broadcasting the service from the hall until quickly even that also made no sense. It would be fun to have our kids home with us all the time. I also look back now and realize that due to the abrupt and dramatic shift of it all, my body did go through some symptoms of shock. I was freezing cold for several nights last March, literally shivering in bed. I was waking up at 2 a.m. in order to sign up for grocery delivery, and also just because I was waking up at 2 a.m. Suddenly, I went from driving all over the state to needing to be sure to leave the house each day and get some fresh air and physically move my body for 15 consecutive minutes. I expect you each have your own version of March 2020 pivoting revelations seared into your memories now, too. What a year it has been. There are so many things we could not have imagined we could and can handle. Few people thought 3-year-olds could wear masks around their nose and mouth all day. It turns out that they can and do. 3rd graders can too. I have to remind both my kids when I pick them up from school, you can take your mask off now that you're in the car. 80-year-olds can too. Many people wondered if congregations would really continue to be congregations if we couldn't physically congregate. And not only have we continued to be connected as congregational communities, there are some folks who've been more able to connect with us here online than they were in person. And I love that we're feeling and seeing that today with folks in Florida and Arizona and beyond. We wondered and then discovered how we would do prom Passover, Easter, GLBTQ Pride, July 4th, ingathering and water communion, a major national election, Thanksgiving, Hanukkah, winter solstice, Christmas Eve, New Year's Eve, birthdays, memorial services, ordinations. Jacques Jaeger's memorial service is still, I think, a professional career life personal highlight for me. It was such an amazing gathering of people from 9 countries. And that was in April of last year. And I still regularly tell people about it when we're reflecting on the ways that being in this pandemic together as a globe has made some things possible we never could have imagined. All the while, we've missed our far-flung friends and families, something awful. As the inequities, racism, trauma, and anguish others have experienced come to our awareness, we've wondered too how to show up in a pandemic, how to speak out, how to change ourselves, our communities, our culture. We are living in a new era in terms of ways to engage, to be an ally or an advocate for others. But still, the most important thing remains: do not sit idly by. Multiple mass shootings this month: March 16th in Atlanta, March 22nd in Boulder, call all of us once again to examine our complacencies, to consider the conversations we need to have in our own extended families, to take a look at our own bookshelves and notice what we are and are not reading and sharing with our loved ones, to consider our own calendars and checkbooks and decide what resources we might be able to contribute to bringing about the change our country so desperately needs. The founder of the hashtag #IamNotAvirus, Mike Kao, lives in West Hartford. And after the tragic events of March 16th in Atlanta, he wrote in a public letter, "In our diverse community of West Hartford, there are children whose families work in many Asian American owned restaurants, groceries, nail salons, massage parlors, and other businesses. There are also parents who tuck their child of Asian descent into their beds. What they and many others in our community have experienced this month and during 2020 was not an isolated act of violence or a random mass shooting somewhere far away. What we felt was the sadness and acute fear that we may not be able to protect our loved ones because their race and gender have made them targets." In concert, West Hartford Schools Superintendent Tom Moore urged all of us here, we can all be vigilant allies by naming and speaking up about any acts of hate, racism, discrimination, and xenophobia. Education and conversations are ways in which we can all promote anti-racism in our communities. It's been a year of pivoting, of occasional panicking, a year of learning, endurance, and discovery. A year of each of our individual lives and those of our families continuing on their courses. Even with pandemic interruption, our lives have continued on their journeys, right? With all their other projects and needs and health challenges and celebrations. Each of us connecting here today has lived through more than 525,600 minutes of what the Hartford Courant recently called in its profound year in review timeline, the defining moment of a generation. And I really enjoyed this slideshow, so I'm putting the link in the chat for those of you who didn't see it online. I don't know if you'll all be able to see it if you're not current subscribers, but give it a look because it's kind of interesting to see the year in photos from a Connecticut perspective. I love Reverend Teresa Inez Soto's poetic words that this year has flexed between periscope. I had to look that up. A periscope is something that looks around the corner. You can't see except through the periscope what's coming up. Periscope, kaleidoscope, and telescope. One day crashed into the next, one challenge into the next. And we have learned that the harder it is, the more care we take. We are the possibility of still rising, of turning the block that falls away into the energy of the mutually assured ascension. Our promises are always asking to be remade. Let us go up and come down for this moment and for the love of the next. And now we are all, in one way or another, on the verge of the next moment, a different year. I wrote these next words for UUCD's April comment, so you'll soon be seeing them in your inbox. And if you don't get the comment, be sure to email, or you could chat with the UUCD office administrator right now to make sure that you get the comment, monthly comment newsletter in your email. I hope you'll take a little extra time with the comment this week. There's a lot going on in the life of this congregation and a lot of thought and care put into all that is included in the monthly newsletter. Think about how you can revitalize your connection with this congregation or start a new connection with this congregation that you haven't explored before. Just as spring is emerging around us and re-energizes us all, what are ways you can renew your commitment and refresh your connection with this beloved community? Spring is springing, and we are emerging from probably one of the strangest and for many loneliest winters most of us can remember. For those of you who have been connecting online with us all year now, think about the ways that that connection has been supportive and crucial for you. Emerging from this particular winter is a little like emerging from a cave, a dark room, or even just the eye doctor's office into the brightness of day. The glare of the whole wide open world can be simultaneously stunning and overwhelming. And even once we start to adjust to the expanse opening up before us, what precisely we are facing next is still unclear. I hear very different hypotheses about what the next year is going to look like, when kids will be vaccinated, et cetera, et cetera. On a very practical day-to-day basis, we are having right now a whole variety of experiences of this emergence, right? Some among you have been to the movies in an actual movie theater. Some have been to the dentist or have gotten your hair cut for the first time in a year or more. Some have felt ready to go out to eat with a few friends again inside a restaurant. Some are planning or already taking some long postponed trips. I think it's safe to say that none of us are 100% comfortable with everything we are doing or with everything we're still not doing. But we are tiptoeing or skipping, and sometimes both in combination, into more fully living our lives. Some of you may follow CNN and Washington Post journalist Fareed Zakaria. His book, 10 Lessons for a Post-Pandemic World, is a relatively short and fascinating read. After much informative analysis of not just this past year, but all that led up to it in terms of global politics and trade and climate change, all the things, he concludes, we have many possible futures in front of us. This ugly pandemic has created the possibility for change and reform. It has opened up a path to a new world. It's ours to take that opportunity or squander it. Nothing is written. That last line, nothing is written, resonates for me with our own Unitarian Universalist commitment to being a continually living, evolving tradition, one that continually strives to incorporate new learnings and new realities into our daily lives and into our faith. Nothing is written in stone, right? At some point recently, I read an article in which an epidemiologist remarked, there have always been diseases among us, and there always will be. We can't eliminate all disease. We have to go about our lives. So I feel like we're trying to hold all these different truths. In Unitarian Universalism, we list among our sources of wisdom the guidance of reason and the results of science. We also cite an openness to the forces which create and uphold life, which may for you mean taking a little bit more of a risk in order to nourish your spirit. My wishes for all of us, for all of you, are twofold: that we can gently affirm the wide range of choices we each will be making, sometimes a difference of choices and comfort levels, even within one household on just one day. And that we can move forward into the coming weeks and months attentive to those activities that do nourish our lives and spirits. If you're going to do something that's perhaps a little more risky than you have done in months, well, do it with joy, savor it, shine on in your love for one another. Beam your gratitude and delight in person upon your beloveds if you are able to. We have gotten through such a bizarre and complicated year. Make sure you are still and always nourishing your spirit and heart, as well as protecting your and your loved ones' bodies. As some of you have heard me say repeatedly over these past almost 3 years with you now, there are and need to be many right ways to feel, many right ways to connect to this beloved community, and many right ways to tiptoe out of a pandemic. May there always be many right ways. May this always be so. Join me in soaking in a few deep breaths of silence, of gratitude and love for each other, of determination to look for the goodness in all things. And then let us sing together along with Jerry, Spirit of Life.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea. Move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
We will now extinguish our chalices as we say together our words of affirmation. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts and out into the world until we are together again. Let us sing together our closing hymn, For All That Is Our Life.
For all that is our life, we sing our thanks and praise. For all life gives a gift, which we are called to use to build the common good and make our own days glad. each other serve, for services we give, for work and its rewards, for hours of rest and love. We come with praise and thanks for all that is our life. For sorrow we must bear, for failures, pains, and loss, for each new thing we learn, for fearful hours that pass. We come with praise and thanks, and all that is our life. For all that is our life, we sing our thanks and praise. For all life is a gift which we are called to use to build the common good and make our own days glad.
For sorrow we must bear, for failures, pain, and loss, for each new thing we learn, for fearful hours that have passed. We come with praise and thanks for all that is our life. Following the postlude, please stay with us for breakout groups if you'd like. And if you're heading off into the rest of whatever this Sunday holds for you during the postlude, is a good time to do that. May it be joy and gladness, not fear or worry, that propel our actions. Each of us are only one, and one human, mortal one at that. But there are lots of small somethings you can do, in tiny sparks that warm and flame and join stars upon stars upon stars that chase away the loneliness. We chase away the loneliness together. Let your life hold joy. Let your soul know contentment. And when you do leave this sacred community today and look away from your device back to the tactile world right around you, go with renewed gratitude for the beauty and comfort right where you are. Go with love in your heart, your spirit nourished by peace, your actions committed to creating greater justice in our shared world.